Today on December 7th, Archangel Michael says, "Don't scroll now. Something important is shifting around you. I'm guiding you away from unnecessary pain. Open your heart immediately. You did not land here by mistake. There are moments in your life when heaven has tried to reach you gently, through signs you ignored, through sudden thoughts that felt like intuition, through sensations you brushed off. And now, this message arrives again, not late, not early, but in the exact moment when something important needs to be spoken into your path. You were about to walk past this, to skip it, to assume it wasn't meant for you, yet something in your chest pulled you back. That sensation was guidance, not coincidence. Listen closely. Do not scroll away now. What you hear in the next moments aligns with something that has already been unfolding behind your awareness. There was movement around your energy, something that was forming in the background of your plans, something that was meant to pull you into unnecessary loss, unnecessary stress, unnecessary emotional damage. You sensed something off recently, you just could not explain it. That uneasy feeling was intervention. There is an urgency here, but it is not urgency made of fear. It is urgency made of mercy. You were heading towards something that would have drained you, something that would have stolen your peace, your clarity, your emotional center. Heaven stepped in earlier than you realized. A door closed. Someone was removed. A situation paused. Something was delayed. And you questioned yourself, wondering if you misread signs, wondering why things slowed down, wondering why momentum suddenly dissolved. You did not misread anything. You were being redirected. Archangelic protection does not always appear as miracles that sparkle. It often appears as interruptions that frustrate you. It comes disguised as confusion, as changed plans, as not yet, or not here. You thought something was failing, but it was being stopped. You thought something was slipping away, but it was being shielded. You do not yet see what was set in motion against your peace, but you are already standing on the other side of it. If you would have skipped this moment, your energy would have remained open to what was draining you. If you walked away too quickly, you would have continued blaming yourself for losses that were actually rescues. You are not being punished. You are being interrupted. Pause now. Breathe. Stay here. There is meaning in why this message found you exactly today. A cycle has been breaking slowly, silently. Something that was sent to weigh you down could not land. Something that was meant to delay you could not attach. Something that was supposed to distract your heart could not complete its assignment. You were protected even in the moments when you felt forgotten. This is your reassurance. You did not miss your blessing. What is meant remains within reach. What was removed was never aligned. What was delayed was preparing space. Do not leave this message halfway. There is more for you, clarity, comfort, and understanding, and heaven has waited for you to finally hear it. Stay. The next part reveals why this message found you now. There was a point recently when life began feeling unstable in ways you could not explain. Conversations turned tense, relationships shifted, finances became unpredictable, emotions felt heavier than usual. Something in your world felt like it was shaking loose. You may have thought you were falling apart, but what was falling apart was the access that draining influences once had to you. You were not imagining the pressure. You were not overreacting. That heaviness was not random. There was an energetic pull forming around you, one that was meant to drain your confidence, to confuse your direction, and pull you into old cycles you had already outgrown. Something wanted your attention, your energy, your emotional involvement, even your peace. What looked like betrayal or disappointment was not accidental. It was a disruption that was designed to enter quietly, through subtle distractions, through sudden emotional fatigue, through people who were inconsistent or unstable. And yet, intervention began before you even recognized it. You were being redirected before anything reached a breaking point. When conversations didn't continue, when communication suddenly slowed, when someone's actions revealed their true nature, those were not losses. Those were closures. When unexpected expenses appeared or plans were paused, it was preventing greater damage. When certain opportunities slipped away, it was shielding you from commitments that would have drained you long-term. When emotions became difficult to understand, it was because something in your spirit refused to settle where peace was not present. There was a moment where you began questioning your worth, your intuition, your sensitivity. You wondered why people shifted. You wondered why motivation evaporated. You wondered why energy felt depleted. You were being spared. There are dangers that do not look like danger at first. Some appear as invitations. Some appear as sudden attention. Some appear as promises that feel exciting, but cost you more than you would receive. Some appear as opportunities that look secure now but collapse later. Your spirit felt it before your mind understood it. You sensed withdrawal before it was spoken. You felt distance before it was clarified. You felt discomfort before actions confirmed it. That was intuition rising, not anxiety taking over. You were being protected from heartbreak that would have unfolded gradually and painfully. You were being protected from emotional burnout that would have lingered long after the excitement faded. You were being protected from financial strain that would have unfolded beneath commitments that looked harmless. Something slowed because something harmful was forming too quickly. And now you see it for what it was, not rejection, not abandonment, not failure, but early intervention. There is nothing trying to take from you now. What was attempting to disrupt you has already lost influence. The danger passed quietly because protection was subtle, calm, steady, and already in place. You do not need to fear what didn't happen. You only need to recognize that what felt scattered was actually spiritual alignment reshaping your path, before loss could take root in your life. There were moments, quiet ones, when something inside you whispered that something was off. You may not have had evidence. You may not have known why. You may not have been able to explain it logically, yet your spirit reacted before your mind understood. You felt discomfort in places where you once felt excitement. You hesitated at doors you once prayed would open. Conversations that used to energize you began draining you. You sensed a shift long before anything visibly changed. This was not fear. It was intuition trying to protect you. There were nights when you could not sleep, not because something was wrong with you, but because something was approaching you energetically. You woke up with thoughts you didn't plan. You remembered situations that no longer existed. You replayed words that lingered with strange heaviness. You felt emotional pressure without a clear reason. You thought you were overthinking. You wondered if you were being dramatic, or sensitive, or irrational. But you were sensing what you could not yet see. That uneasiness was alignment pulling you away from what was not rightful for your spirit. Spiritual awareness often arrives before confirmation does, and because there was no visible proof, you doubted yourself. You tried to silence what was actually trying to save you. You minimized your own knowing. You looked for reasons to justify discomfort instead of accepting it. Your spirit speaks before events unfold. It warns gently before consequences manifest. And when you ignored those early nudges, the signs intensified. Suddenly your thoughts shifted. Suddenly your body felt drained. Suddenly conversations felt uncomfortable. Suddenly you felt unmotivated to pursue something you once wanted desperately. These were not random emotional fluctuations, they were spiritual sirens. Anything that was not protective of your peace began revealing its weight. Anything that would have delayed your growth began exposing its instability. Anything that mirrored an old wound resurfaced in order to release, not repeat. What felt like anxiety was actually clarity forming. What felt like resistance was actually protection rising. What felt like confusion was actually truth aligning itself. And now, looking back, you understand why your spirit reacted before events unfolded. Do not carry guilt for doubting your intuition. You were taught to trust logic above inner knowing. You were taught to wait for proof instead of protection. You were taught that discomfort meant insecurity, not revelation. But now, you are learning differently. Your spirit does not warn without reason. Your intuition is not malfunctioning. It is guidance. Do not stop reading now, because this part matters. There was nothing wrong with how you felt. Nothing wrong with what you sensed. Nothing wrong with the hesitation that came out of nowhere. You were being prepared, not panicked. You were being guided, not confused. You were being awakened to danger that never reached you. Forgive yourself for not listening sooner. What matters is that you are listening now, and because of that, the next chapter opens without the weight you were never meant to carry. There were forces around you recently, some visible, some subtle, that were trying to pull energy from you that was never theirs to take. Someone wanted access to your time, your attention, your emotional strength, not because they intended to pour into you, but because they felt entitled to what you naturally hold. There was a situation forming that would have kept you second-guessing yourself, dimming your voice, doubting your worth. You were being steered away before it reached a level that would have damaged something sacred within you. Not everything that wants you deserves you. Some people are drawn not to your presence, but to your peace. Not to your heart, but to your healing. Not to your spirit, but to your stability. When people entered your life with inconsistent motives, guidance began redirecting you long before attachment took root. Something tried to delay what was meant for your next chapter. A distraction appeared right when a blessing was aligning. A connection resurfaced right when you were healing. A familiar temptation opened just when you were finally stepping into clarity. You didn't know at the time that these were attempts to pull you backward. You only saw what appeared comforting, familiar, or appealing. But what was blocked was not meant for you. You were being separated from relationships that could only survive when you were drained. You were being removed from conversations that repeated cycles disguised as progress. You were being held back from commitments that looked promising at first glance but would have cost emotional peace later. What felt like rejection saved you? What felt like abandonment protected you? What felt like endings prevented long-term pain? Every door that would not open was shielding you from something that would have required pieces of you to maintain. Every pause protected you from overgiving. Every unexplained shift saved you from the slow erosion of confidence. There was a specific kind of sabotage forming, not necessarily through people acting consciously, but through energy that thrives when you're uncertain. When you're confused, your boundaries lower. When you doubt yourself, you overcompensate. When you seek validation, you tolerate things that drain you. This time, you were not allowed to fall into that pattern. You may think something was taken from you, when in truth it was intercepted. Separation was a spiritual rescue dressed as disappointment. Silence was protection disguised as distance. Delay was spiritual timing rearranging consequences that would have unfolded later. You are now stepping out of what did not reach you. That is why there is relief beneath the sadness, peace beneath the confusion, clarity beneath the ache. You didn't lose anything. You were preserved. What was blocked would have distracted you from healing or diluted your purpose. What left was never supportive of your growth. What didn't continue was never meant to anchor your future. You were not denied, you were spared. Look back and notice, everything that left your life did so before it could take more than it should. Every ending was early enough to protect your heart, late enough for you to learn, and precise enough to prepare you for what is still unfolding. You were not abandoned. You were shielded. There was something you wanted to work out. Something you hoped wouldn't fall apart. A relationship, an opportunity, a chapter of your life that you tried to keep alive, even when it was draining you. You gave effort. You showed loyalty. You held on longer than anyone saw. And when it ended, it hurt. When communication faded, it confused you. When something shifted suddenly, it left you wondering what you did wrong. The loss was real. Your tears were real. Your disappointment was real. But the tragedy you think happened was not the one you believe. What disappeared was not your future. It was something that would have broken you over time. What left was not stability, it was something that would have unraveled slowly and painfully. You were pulled out before the damage reached you. There are things that look like rejection, when truly they are protection happening early. There are connections that end before attachment deepens, because if they stayed longer, you would have surrendered parts of yourself to maintain something that wasn't built to honor you. There are opportunities that slip away not because you weren't ready, but because they were never prepared to hold you. You did not fail. You were redirected. You did not lose. You were released. What ended actually saved you from trying to survive something that was never meant to claim your peace. If you look back closely, you will remember moments when you felt uneasy, moments when your spirit felt strained, moments when you were adjusting yourself smaller just to belong. The ending came at the exact moment where compromise would have become costly. When someone could no longer access you emotionally, it wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. When something paused unexpectedly, it wasn't loss, it was timing. When what you wanted stopped flowing toward you, it wasn't punishment, it was rewiring. You were pulled out gently, but firmly. You may not have realized it, but you were being taken out of situations that would have dissolved your confidence piece by piece. You were protected from carrying responsibilities that weren't yours, from trying to rescue someone who was not prepared to meet you halfway, from promising yourself peace in environments where peace could not sustain itself. A door closed because your heart was about to settle where it would shrink. A chapter ended because you were beginning to compromise parts of yourself just to keep it open. A dynamic dissolved because you were starting to accept less than what you're built to receive. Nothing you lost was designed to stay. Nothing that walked away carried your future. Nothing that fell apart took destiny with it. You are not mourning a future, you are releasing a limitation. You are not grieving scarcity, you are making room for expansion. And now, the heaviness fades. You are no longer living inside the impact of what collapsed, you are living beyond it. Healing is not about pretending it never hurt, it is about realizing it hurt because you cared. But protection arrived before the damage was permanent. Nothing was ruined. You were rescued. There was a stretch of time when you felt unusually alone. Messages slowed. People who once reached for you stepped back. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly became shallow or distant. You wondered if you did something wrong, if you changed too much, if life was moving forward without you in it. The truth is, you were not being abandoned, you were being separated. Sometimes life creates space around you because you are becoming someone you weren't before. You are entering a new level of clarity and emotional maturity, and not everyone around you could remain connected to that version of you. When your heart evolves, your circle naturally shifts. When your energy rises, familiarity no longer feels fulfilling. When old connections no longer align, silence becomes a form of protection rather than rejection. Your isolation was a spiritual quarantine, not punishment, but preservation. You were being protected from conversations that would have discouraged you, from opinions that would have talked you out of growth, from energies that would have kept you looping in repetitive cycles. There were dynamics where you would have defaulted into overgiving. There were people who would have leaned on you rather than heal themselves. There were situations that would have drained your emotional progress. So life cleared the space. You needed silence to stop absorbing what was no longer yours to carry. You needed distance so your heart could stop bending to accommodate others. You needed stillness so your spirit could recalibrate. When people stepped back, it was not because you were unworthy, it was because your path was being rerouted. When plans fell through, it was not because nothing was meant for you, it was because something was preparing to meet you that requires your full presence, not fragments of you spread everywhere. Feeling misunderstood was a signal that your identity was shifting. You no longer relate to what you used to tolerate. You no longer resonate with conversations that revolve around pain, complaint, comparison, or negativity. You're craving truth, peace, genuine connection, and emotional reciprocity. And those things cannot flourish when surrounded by chaos. Your isolation was purification. Your quiet season was a reset. Your loneliness was spaciousness being made for something real. Life needed you unplugged from noise so you could hear yourself. You needed to relearn who you are without carrying the weight of expectations. You needed to be empty enough for something meaningful to arrive. And what comes next will make sense of the silence. Stay, because what comes next explains why you were kept apart. There is a new circle aligning, people who will not drain you, but water you. People who will not need you to shrink, but will expand with you. People who speak with intention, not convenience, with truth, not illusion, with presence, not attachment. Your loneliness was not the ending. It was the preparation. The isolation was not absence, it was alignment. You were not left behind, you were being positioned for where your heart actually belongs. There was a moment when everything felt ready, your heart felt prepared, your plans were forming, momentum was starting to build, and then suddenly, life slowed down. Something paused. The outcome you expected didn't unfold when you thought it would. Instead of acceleration, there was delay. Instead of movement, everything halted. And at first, you thought it meant failure. It wasn't failure, it was intervention. Sometimes timing shifts not because you are behind, but because something ahead of you isn't ready to hold what you are stepping into. Sometimes the delay isn't about you, it is about the environment not being stable yet. Paths have to open. People have to grow. Circumstances need to realign. You didn't lose time, you were guarded from premature timing. If things had unfolded when you first wanted them to, they would have collapsed later. What looked like waiting was actually protection disguised as stillness. What felt like stagnation was preparation working silently. Life stretches time when healing needs to catch up to destiny. During that season of pause, you learned boundaries. You learned discernment. You learned to stop giving your energy to places that didn't honor you. You learned to recognize emotional peace instead of emotional attachment. You learned that alignment isn't rushed, it is revealed. Every delay refined you. Every postponed outcome matured you. Every paused plan created space for clarity. Had the door opened when you knocked, you would have walked into something half-formed. The foundation would have cracked beneath the weight of what you were trying to build. Not because you weren't worthy, but because the situation could not sustain what you were bringing into it. Readiness required restructuring. Something in your life needed closure before new blessings could stabilize. An old wound needed to surface so you wouldn't repeat a pattern unconsciously. A cycle needed to end completely so you would not sabotage the beginning of the next one. What looked like detour became alignment. What looked like pause became preparation. What looked like loss became redirection. Now, time feels different, not heavy, not stagnant, but opening. You sense movement again, clarity again, direction again. The timing is shifting not because you forced it, but because you now match what you once desired. Your emotional self finally aligns with what your future requires. You are no longer trying to belong where your spirit is shrinking. You are no longer chasing what drains you. You are no longer settling for being understood partially. You are stepping into life as someone who knows their worth, not as someone hoping for permission to exist in a space. You needed that delay to become who you now are. Life paused you so something bigger wouldn't collapse later. The long waiting, the silence, the fatigue, the feeling that nothing was happening, all of that was healing happening beneath your awareness. You are not late. You are not behind. You are right on time, because the timeline was stretched to fit your growth, so that when what is meant arrives, nothing in you rejects it, doubts it, or fears losing it. Now, you are ready. There is a moment, specific, defined, difficult to explain, when a season ends without reopening. And for you, that moment aligns with now. The day you encounter these words is symbolic, even if you don't immediately realize why. A line has been drawn between who you were before and who you are becoming. The heaviness that once followed you cannot cross into what is forming now. That chapter does not continue. That cycle does not repeat. This is where separation becomes blessing. Life has already begun shifting in the unseen. Patterns that used to keep you stuck no longer have access. People who used to pull you emotionally no longer carry influence. Thoughts that once overwhelmed you are losing their power. You have stepped into a different internal space, quieter, clearer, stronger, and because of that shift, the external begins rearranging too. Today marks recognition. You are not fighting old battles anymore. You are not recovering from old wounds anymore. You are standing at a threshold where the future begins to take shape differently, not through force, but through alignment. Something that was once draining has released you. Something that once intimidated you no longer holds fear. A door that kept you stagnant has closed, and the closing is final. Not temporary. Not partial. Not conditional. Final. This is where the breakthrough activates. What couldn't move forward before is now unstuck. What felt distant is now approaching. What felt out of reach is now attainable. Your spirit has shifted from trying to survive into learning how to receive. And because that shift is internal, everything else responds to it. The universe does not rearrange seasons without reason. When a line is drawn, it is drawn for your protection. There are things you emotionally graduated from, meaning life no longer needs to test you in areas where you have already demonstrated growth. You no longer chase what does not choose you. You no longer remain where your peace cannot breathe. You no longer apologize for being intuitive, sensitive, discerning, or aware. You have crossed into spiritual adulthood. What once felt unstable will stabilize. What once felt far away will draw closer. The distance between desire and manifestation shrinks when identity aligns with destiny. After today, something is no longer following you. Not fear of rejection. Not fear of abandonment. Not fear of starting again. That fear dissolves because you are not starting over, you are starting forward. A line has been drawn behind you so you will not return to patterns you healed from. You will not adjust yourself to stay where your spirit outgrew. You will not settle into old emotional roles. This shift is not caused by luck, it is caused by readiness. And now, what once waited for you is permitted to unfold. Life is no longer reteaching the same lesson. Life is now revealing the next chapter. And when the future speaks to you, you will recognize it, not as something unlikely, but as something familiar, something promised, something timed correctly. Today does not only mark a shift. It marks safe passage into what belongs to you. Now that the weight has lifted, something begins opening toward you, something you could not receive when you were still carrying what was draining you. Blessings do not arrive when your hands are full, and your spirit has finally released what was occupying space that was never meant to stay. What comes next is not accidental. It is not random. It is not delayed anymore. It is what was aligned for you the moment harm was neutralized. One of the blessings forming now is restored connection, not necessarily with someone from the past, though that is possible, but with someone whose presence brings your spirit peace, not pressure. You are ready for conversations that don't leave you questioning your value. You are ready for relationships where you don't have to earn your belonging. You are ready for reciprocity, for honesty, for emotional safety. You are ready to be met at the level you've grown into. Love can approach you now because your heart has space to receive, rather than rescue. Another blessing arriving is financial improvement, not through force or struggle, but through clarity and alignment. You are stepping into stability that supports your spirit instead of exhausting it. Decisions will feel clearer. Opportunities will feel more aligned. Doors that would have depleted you will no longer look appealing, because you can now sense what honors you and what does not. Peace returns, not as a temporary feeling, but as your new baseline. Your nervous system is no longer reacting to uncertainty. Your mind is no longer chasing answers. Your heart is no longer searching for belonging. Something within you settles. Something softens. Something exhales. Life begins to meet you gently. You are ready to receive rest, not because you gave up, but because you no longer need to fight for what should come naturally. You are ready to receive clarity, not because confusion disappeared, but because truth finally has room to settle without being interrupted. You are ready to receive alignment, not because you forced timing, but because timing arrived when resilience and readiness finally matched. There is also a blessing of renewed confidence, quiet, not loud, secure, not anxious. You are no longer trying to prove your worth. You're not performing for acceptance. You're not shrinking to be included. Your worth is no longer questioned internally, which means it will no longer be negotiated externally. What is meant for you now comes with ease, not as absence of effort, but as absence of resistance. You are no longer chasing what withdraws. You are no longer convincing what hesitates. You are no longer compromising for what barely shows up. Receiving becomes natural when your energy is not leaking. And now, nothing is leaking. What once delayed you no longer exists. What once distracted you has dissolved. The obstacles that made you doubt yourself have been dismantled one by one. And because of that, what has been waiting can move toward you. Blessing does not arrive when life is perfect. Blessing arrives when your heart is positioned to accept joy without fear. You are now positioned. You are now open. What is meant for you will no longer bypass you, because the version of you standing today is capable of holding what your heart once prayed for. Now that something new is opening toward you, alignment becomes the gentle work of making space for it. Not through force, not through urgency, not by demanding timing to move faster, but by allowing yourself to meet life with openness rather than expectation. You do not need to chase what is meant for you. You do not need to analyze why something left. You do not need to rehearse past conversations or rewrite history in your mind. The path ahead of you is forward-moving, and alignment comes through surrender, not effort. One of the clearest ways to align with what is approaching is to release bitterness, not by pretending nothing hurt you, but by acknowledging that what happened has already served its purpose. You are not obligated to stay emotionally connected to something that no longer exists. You are not required to keep reopening the memory of what closed. Allow it to remain closed. Bitterness only ties you to experiences that no longer belong to your identity. You can remember without reliving. Acceptance is alignment. When someone left, when something changed, when timing shifted, it was not proof of loss. It was proof of completion. Let yourself stop asking why. Let yourself stop trying to interpret endings. Release the idea that something unfinished means something failed. Some chapters end before you understand them fully. A gentle way to align is to stop chasing what already walked away. You don't need to pull anything back into your life. What is aligned does not need pressure. If something returns, it will return without asking you to betray yourself. If something new arrives, it will meet you at your level of truth, not at your level of fear. There is empowerment in trusting that what stays is meant to stay. There is peace in not demanding answers. There is freedom in letting life unfold naturally. Another step of alignment is allowing space for better experiences, not through expectation, but through openness. When conversations feel nourishing, allow them. When opportunities feel aligned, explore them. When your spirit feels peace, follow it. When something feels exhausting from the beginning, don't insist on making it fit. You align by honoring what feels peaceful, not by forcing what requires effort to remain intact. Do not exit now, your instructions matter. You align by being emotionally present where life actually supports you. You align by showing up fully in moments that show up fully for you. You align by recognizing when something feels draining before attachment takes root. You align by trusting that your heart knows when something is safe. Let your actions mirror where peace is already forming. Let your decisions reflect where ease already exists. Let your boundaries honor where alignment has replaced longing. You may not have chosen every ending, but you can choose what begins next. And as you choose from healed identity, not wounded expectation. Choose from clarity, not desperation. Choose from patience, not urgency. Aligning with what is released toward you is simply the act of meeting life without resistance, trusting that what feels stable, nourishing, respectful, and balanced will unfold at the pace it is meant to. Your role now is not to chase, but to receive through openness. What belongs to you does not demand shrinking. It meets you as you are, and alignment is the gentle, steady decision to stand in who you are without apology. There is something important for you to remember now. You were never moving through life alone, even when it felt silent. You were never forgotten, even when circumstances grew heavy. You were never punished, even when life redirected you. You are not the result of abandonment, you are the result of continued guidance, direction, and care that often moved behind the surface of your awareness. Your worth has not decreased because someone could not recognize it. Your value did not disappear because something ended. You do not lose your significance simply because a situation changed. Your worth remains intact, untouched, unaltered by any disappointment or delay you faced. You are still someone who deserves stability, sincerity, peace, and presence. You are chosen, not overlooked. You are being led, not tested into exhaustion. You are being shaped, not diminished. Your journey up to now has not been about proving anything. It has been about remembering who you already are. Your sensitivity is not weakness, it is awareness. Your discernment is not overthinking, it is protection. Your depth is not too much, it is evidence that your heart was never built for shallow places. There is companionship around you, not always through people, but through reassurance, intuition, peace, inner knowing, clarity that arrives quietly, nudges that guide without force, comfort that appears exactly when heaviness tries to return. Support is not always dramatic, often it is subtle, steady, and present in the smallest of confirmations. You are not walking forward as someone fragile, you are walking forward as someone strengthened by what could not break you. You survived moments you thought would silence your voice. You rose after situations that tried to reduce your worth. You kept giving even when you didn't feel poured into. None of that was wasted. Confidence begins returning when you stop asking whether you are enough. You always were. Safety becomes felt when you stop trying to hold spaces that were not meant to keep you. When life shifted, it was not rejection, it was a release from places that could no longer honor the fullness of who you are becoming. Allow yourself to stand differently now. Stand knowing that not everyone sees you deeply, but those who are meant to will. Stand knowing that peace is something you are worthy of experiencing consistently, not temporarily. Stand knowing that your presence brings value, not because you prove anything, but because of who you naturally are. You don't need grand affirmations to feel validated. Your life has already revealed your resilience. You don't need constant reassurance from others to feel supported. You have evidence of how far you've come. Where you are heading requires confidence, not performance. Patience, not fear. Self-respect, not attachment. And most of all, you walk into what comes next with the understanding that you deserve circumstances and relationships that meet you with sincerity, steadiness, and mutual care. Your worth is not something you rebuild now, it is something you finally recognize. You are safe stepping into what awaits, not because the world changes, but because you are now anchored in who you are. Now that you have walked through understanding, release, protection, and clarity, this moment becomes a symbolic sealing over your life, a closing of what wounded you and an establishing of what supports you. Not as a dramatic event, but as a quiet certainty inside you. A new covering settles over your heart, your thoughts, your steps, and the choices ahead. This is not a seal that binds you, it is a seal that stabilizes you. It represents emotional protection, clearer direction, and a sense of inner safety that does not disappear when life shifts. You are stepping into a time where peace is not fragile, where peace is not dependent on people staying, where peace is not based on circumstances remaining unchanged, where peace is not situational, but internal. A seal means closure, What needed to end has ended. A seal means completion. What ran its course does not return. A seal means readiness. What belongs to you now has space to enter. You are covered, not in the sense of being shielded from life itself, but in the sense that you are no longer walking exposed, uncertain, or emotionally unanchored. A quiet confidence rests over you, the kind that doesn't need external validation to stay steady. You don't need answers to trust the direction things are moving. You don't need clarity before peace arrives. Something within you has shifted permanently. This is the part where you claim what opens next, not with pressure, not with urgency, but with acknowledgement. Claim peace where you once carried anxious attachment. Claim clarity where you once questioned yourself. Claim openness where your heart once remained guarded. Claim expansion where you once expected disappointment. Speak softly inside yourself. I am covered in peace. I release what is finished. I welcome what supports my growth. I walk forward with trust. Agree not with fear, but with readiness. Affirm not that everything will be perfect, but that you are prepared for what unfolds, and that preparation is enough. You are not sealing your future, you are sealing the past. You're closing wounds, not possibilities. You're closing emotional loops, not opportunities. This seal represents that you carry your worth with you now, rather than searching for it externally. It represents that you move with emotional clarity instead of adapting out of fear. It represents that your life, from this point forward, is not built from survival, but from intention. Let peace settle into that. Let quiet confidence take its place. Let softness return where tension lived. What comes next will not overwhelm you because you are entering it from stability, not uncertainty. You are stepping into what unfolds without needing to hold it tightly. What is right will remain. What is aligned will expand. What is reciprocal will deepen. And as you continue forward, you are not walking away from anything, you are walking into what was waiting once space was cleared. This seal is not a closing gesture, it is a beginning. Receive it gently. Affirm it quietly. Carry it peacefully. Your life from this moment continues from truth, not longing, not fear, not confusion, but truth that you now recognize as belonging to you.